Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining the show today. I know some of you will be taking time out. Maybe you're busy driving to Durham to a castle for an eye test. So it's well appreciated. Danny Townley, you join us today. Massive Liverpool fan and brave of you to come on because we are discussing Crystanbul. How was it for you? So let's go right to the start, Danny. You're 2 games away from the end of the season. You've just come off the Gerrard slip. You're level on points with Man City, but they've got a much better goal difference than you. Coming into the game, did you genuinely have a belief still that you could still win the title?
My memory of it is that no, I didn't really. I sort of pinned it all on staying ahead of them on points because, as we've discussed, there was a bit of a goal difference disparity. They were well ahead of us on goals, so it felt like if we didn't have our noses in front, then we were in trouble. And going into that Chelsea game, personally for me anyway, felt like we fluffed our lines up there, and from then on it was just sort of hoping City would drop points rather than
Chelsea game. I remember when you were coming in with a coach and the fans and the buzz. It almost felt like a sort of party atmosphere. Do you think there was too much of a party atmosphere too soon?
No, I don't think so, because I feel like that sort of party atmosphere you're referring to sort of was created amongst the fans more for ourselves, as in to give ourselves a bit of belief and to give maybe the team a bit of belief. We've been singing and welcoming the bus in for games on end, like probably the last 7 or 8 games of the season, home games, singing, we're going to win the league now, you're going to believe us, that sort of stuff. And it just felt as there was like this party atmosphere, like you say, in the streets before the Chelsea game. And my memory of it, it's a while ago now, but my memory of it is after that game, it felt like, right, done now.
It's interesting you mentioned that song. Do you feel that song, You're Never Going to Believe Us, We're Going to Win the League, came back to haunt you a little bit? Because opposition fans did really throw it back in your face, didn't they?
Yeah, it did.
I remember, because I was at the game, obviously, I was walking past your end before the game and I could hear your fans singing that song. And for me, it still felt like you had a buzz and an energy, especially as well, judging by how many of you travelled down that day. So it definitely felt like, to me, there was still an element of belief. And then early in the game, it felt like the stars were realigning for you after the Gerrard slip when Joe Allen, smallest player on the pitch, rises and scores a header against a Tony Pulis team that are renowned for being really good defensively at set plays. So at that point and during the course of the first half, as you went 3-0 up, did not even a part of you start getting that sort of belief, that sort of football fan dream mentality going again?
I suppose as any football fan, but a Liverpool fan in particular, to not sort of have a little glimmer of, it's, the miracle might happen, the thing that should be completely off the cards might just happen here. I suppose that might have crept back in. But on the other hand, that season, we'd been used to doing that. We've been used to absolutely blitzing teams, going 3-4 up. Now, I know that we only went 3-0 up in the second half in that game, but in previous games we've gone 3-4 up in 20 minutes. So we've been quite used to absolutely smashing teams off the park early on. So I personally, others might have felt differently, but I personally was still of the, maybe I'm a bit of a pessimistic person, but I was still of the belief that there's nothing we could do here. We'll just bash some goals.
It definitely felt like your players still believed. And they were bang up for it. And the fans in the stadium, their energy was going. I mean, if you'd told me at half-time what would have happened, I would have laughed. The game felt dead. But then obviously everything turned. And I mentioned the Joe Allen moment, but it all really turned again when Delaney had his Vincent Kompany moment and scored from 25 to 30 yards. And we talked about the stars beginning to align for you again. Well, maybe the stars started to align in another direction then, because I've never seen Delaney score a goal like that. If Palace fans can correct,
wasn't that his first goal, his first Premier League goal or something?
It might well have been. Yeah.
It was.
I mean, what struck me, though, about that, looking back on the game, is I always thought in my head that goal was on around the 60th or the 70th minute. It was actually in the 79th minute. So that meant your capitulation was literally in minutes. I mean, even at that point, 3-1, were you worried?
Again, I suppose going back to that team, that season, probably a little bit, yeah. It's hard to remember exactly how I felt, but the whole season had been a sort of story of an absolutely brilliant attacking team, but an absolutely shambolic defensive team. I've got written down here, we conceded 50 goals in the league that season, which was only 3 better than Hull, who finished 16th. And we were trying to win a title.
That's not a title-winning form, is it?
Mad, yeah, absolute madness, right?
No. You talked about the defence. So Jonathan Pearce, who was commentator that day, described Brendan Rodgers as naive. Tony Pulis in his post-match interview said he always believed we would score. Now, he said he didn't believe you were going for the goal difference. That's just the way Liverpool set up that season, that you always went to score more. Brendan Rodgers actually recently did an interview, I think it was just last week, on this game. And he said that at half-time, he actually told the players that not to go for the goal difference, but to go for the points. But I find that hard to believe, judging by the fact that when I watched it again at 3-1, Martin Skirtle was flying down the left wing.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to criticise Rodgers and that team for going into games of football like that, because, as I've said, they were used to just blitzing teams, and it was how they'd got to the position they were in. But when you're coming down that close to the end of the season, and even if the ball was in City's court, you want to keep the pressure on. I've got a couple of quotes from Brendan Rodgers actually after the game. He said, even at 3-0 in the modern game, it's a difficult scoreline. It's like, what? And he brought Moses on when we were 3-2 up after conceding 2 in 3 minutes. He brought an attacker on when he had Daniel Agger on the bench warming up all the second half. It's just like,
I mean, that is absolutely damning, isn't it? That to have brought Moses on at that point is really strange. I mean, he actually had a good chance at 3-0 that he missed. You mentioned Moses because he actually came from our academy. How did you sort of find Moses when he was at your club?
Not much to remember, to be honest. He was sort of in and out the team. I don't think he was playing every week, and he was only on loan, wasn't he, from Chelsea, was he?
Yeah, it does seem like your sort of time with him was sort of like a footnote in his career.
Yeah. Not much to remember from my point of view anyway. Like,
okay. We've given Brendan Rodgers a hard time, but you know that I quite rate him as a manager, and I actually gave you a hard time when you sacked him. But obviously now I hold my hands up and say it was the right decision, considering what Klopp has done. Do you feel, since he's come back with Leicester, watching him now, particularly when you think Siyunku and Jonathan Evans has been one of the best defensive partnerships this season, do you think he's kind of gone away to Celtic, had some time out of the Premier League, and come back a different manager, as a manager now who could see a team over the line to win a title?
Yeah, possibly. I don't know about different manager completely, but I think he might have refined some of his sort of the naivety you were mentioning. I haven't watched loads and loads of Leicester this season, or the end of last season for that matter, but he's obviously playing more to Jamie Vardy's strengths. He's playing the balls into the channels. And
you should watch them, mate, because in my opinion, Leicester have been the best watching the Premier League this season.
Yeah, well, I've watched them mainly just when Liverpool played them and things like that. We absolutely trounced them all over the park at their place. But, yeah, I mean, I would say he's probably developing that point too. As you say, them defenders have had a great season. So that's not just because by chance, is it? Vardy's had a great season. So, for example, that team, the Brendan Rodgers Liverpool team, didn't have a player like Jamie Vardy in it. There would have been no long balls getting played over the top. It was all sort of into the quick one in the channels and then hoped Suarez could sort of upset the defence. Which
yeah, I mean, he definitely gets a tune out of strikers, doesn't he? Like, he definitely got a tune out of Suarez. He's definitely got a tune out of Sturridge. He got the best tune that you've ever had out of Sturridge. I think, it's kind of his. I kind of feel like, do you feel like that game, Crystanbul, was his sort of defining moment as a manager of Liverpool? It almost feels like that Kevin Keegan moment when they played you and they lost 4-3 and Keegan's head went down in the dugout. Feel that would be sort of the Crystanbul moment. Obviously, people look to the Gerrard slip, but the Crystanbul was maybe the defining moment for Rodgers in his time at Liverpool. He didn't quite have enough to deliver your dream.
No, to be honest, I as you were saying that, you mentioned the Gerrard slip in the Chelsea game. I would see the Chelsea game as certainly the negative defining game in his tenure. But like he gets a bad rap, I think, Rodgers, amongst Liverpool fans, because actually the couple of seasons he was successful at us were some of my favourite seasons. Going to Sporting Liverpool, going to Anfield, they were just like every game was just so much entertainment. And as I say, we were like, I remember a game we were 4-0 up against Arsenal in 20 minutes. Like it was brilliant to go and watch. So I don't think of him in a negative way overall. But if I was to think of one game, I would go for the Chelsea game, to be honest. Because I say that's when it was still completely in our hands.
And he got schooled by Mourinho, didn't he? I mean, he worked for Chelsea's academy when Mourinho was manager. It felt a bit like teach of each student that day.
And as I sort of alluded to before, the way we got into the position we were in was by attacking. So it was never likely that we were going to just set up and defend for that game, because then if we would have gone on to lose it anyway, then everyone would have gone, well, why didn't you attack them? So it was sort of a difficult one going in. But that was the game I would think of.
We talked a lot about the defensive sort of frailty, but I felt like after the game, Carragher went on like a rant for 10 minutes about your defence. And I felt like it was a little bit too much about Liverpool and not enough about us and what we did in that game. We had an amazing energy about that team under Tony Pulis. And two players, and I want to ask you about this, who really basically did this for us was Murray and Gale. And they almost showed old school strike partnership link-ups that sort of brought back that sort of 4-4-2 era. And in lockdown, everyone's been having debates about best positions, best teams. And I know we've talked a lot about 90 strikers. Do you think the old strike partnerships of the old days have gone completely? Or do you think there's still room for them in the game?
I would say they seem to have gone out of football at the moment, but football, like everything else, sort of goes in cycles. I'm sure it'll go around another cycle and it'll come back to there'll be two strikers playing up front or a big man and a little man or whatever. I would say at the moment, yeah, you're right. It's sort of died out, hasn't it?
I sometimes feel like clubs could use it more, even if they used it more like in the last 15 minutes and like we did when we threw Murray. I mean, I think we would have started with Cameron Jerome. He was our main striker at the time. And then I think Gale and Murray came off the bench. I feel like managers could use the two up top, because defenders are so used to one striker and the two coming in from wide now and that's what happened to you on that day, because Murray and Gale they just spun it.
But that's why I say it might tend to be a sort of cyclical thing and come back, because defenders get used to defending one way, so attacking teams have to adapt and whatnot.
Yeah, I definitely think there's scope for managers to use it more through subs like we did that day. But, because you look back on Liverpool's history, you've had great strike partnerships, haven't you? Like Titi Camara and Sean Dundee.
Hey, they're both not bad players, They're maybe not remembered as well as they should be.
Titi Camara won African Player of the Year for me on Football Manager. But I think it was called Championship Manager once. Yeah,
he was an on and off one a bit. Scored a few absolute belters, but then
quite erratic. Yeah. I want to come on to the atmosphere. Now, I was sitting on the edge of the corner flag right next to the Fanatics, who were at that point on the corner flag. Now, I know Liverpool has a great atmosphere. It's almost like mythical. It's almost like a church, Anfield, at times. But do you feel like the players And having watched Sheffield United, they definitely had that newly promoted team buzz in their atmosphere this year. And our atmosphere that day was incredible. I mean, I almost feel like when it went to 3-1, you felt like something was going to happen. I definitely feel like we almost sucked the second and third goals in. Do you feel like your players were a little bit intimidated?
Very possibly. I don't remember it specifically thinking that at the time, but we've all been either in crowds or watching the games, and it does happen. Like you get a goal when you're 2-3 down, and you just know something's happening here. There's like an energy in the stadium. Something's happening, which is a bit different here. Liverpool have been lucky to have quite a lot of them. I've got a lot of time for Palace fans, actually, apart from yourself, obviously. Like the only two sets of fans I remember clapping out of Anfield were Palace and Barcelona, actually.
Really? Well, that's amazing.
Barcelona, because they absolutely destroyed us off the pitch, and they would like, it was like a sort of reciprocal thing. And Palace I can't remember what the game was now specifically, but I was quite close to them for once, which I normally wouldn't be. And they were great all game. But yeah,
in terms of fans in England, we're probably the most similar in terms of the things like the flags and the tifo and things like that. I mean, when you come out at Palace, the fanatics have all their flags, and you come out at Anfield, there's always sort of flags as well. So, similarities. And obviously, you've had some amazing atmospheres as well. I mean, remember that Chelsea game when you beat them in the Champions League when Mourinho was there, and you sort of had that. Your atmosphere was sort of your hold over them, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's still good at times now when we're a good team, but funnily enough, it can be better when we're not as good a team, because the fans again sort of feel like they need to be part of it. They need to lift the team. But come back to the fans for a second. I've been reading a lot of things about this and stuff recently about sort of English crowds and German crowds and stuff. Obviously, in Germany they have flags and they have drums and it goes. I feel like Palace fans are closer to being that sort of continental style of fans where you just keep the noise going and going. Whereas quite often you can go to Anfield, and I'll hold my hands up and admit you can get a terrible atmosphere in Anfield.
Yeah, I've been to Anfield once and I didn't really see the famous atmosphere.
No. If it's a game where the fans don't feel, this is a big game for us, a big night or whatever, it can be really flat. But then again, like the sort of English style of football fan is to be reactive to what's on the pitch. And then the noise levels can go through the roof. Whereas in German football especially, it's like constant and just keeps plodding along all the way.
And I guess you probably at Anfield got the tourist element. Not saying there's anything wrong with the tourist. It does affect the atmosphere. And it's even crept in a little bit at Palace. I mean, that's why I think this year I've watched Sheffield United, and their newly promoted buzz really reminded me of that Crystanbul day, like just the sheer excitement to be in the Premier League. I want to come on to Steven Gerrard. I've talked about how everyone in lockdown have been having these debates about players and teams. And one of the big ones, everyone had like the best 10 strikers in the Premier League, and then you do the best 10 midfielders. Now, inevitably in lockdown, the old debate, Scholes, Gerrard and Lampard came back. Now, me personally, I wouldn't even have Lampard in the debate. So let's shove him out. I want to put this to you because I think I'd probably... I'd rate Gerrard highly. Obviously, it'd be silly not to. But I've always sort of had a couple of players above him. And I think the sort of... that Crystanbul run-in is partly why. I want to put this to you because I think I'd probably rate Roy Keane above Gerrard as well. Could you imagine Roy Keane and Paul Scholes, with the control element they had in their game, 2 games away from potentially winning a Premier League title, having a team lose a 3-0 lead on their watch?
No, to be fair, but you were talking about when by the time you've got, say, Scholes and Keane, by the time certainly I can remember them being dominant, because it sort of started before I can really remember. They'd won league after league, like they'd done it time and again. Whereas that Rodgers side well, any Liverpool side, but that one in particular, we'd won nothing. The last thing we'd won at that point was the League Cup in 2012 under Dalglish. So I know you're saying Gerrard, but should he have sort of shepherded his forces better? You're probably right, he should have, but we didn't have any experience of getting over the line at that point.
And also, that sort of counted against him is that he was kind of an experience, because you were kind of the favourites before the Chelsea game to win the league, weren't you? So of like Gerrard, his sort of moments like Istanbul or the cup final against Liverpool, which were incredible moments that other players, probably Roy Keane or Paul Scholes, might not have been able to do. But do you think like this was a new position for him to be sort of in front? And I almost felt like he kind of carried on doing his glorified Roy at the Rover type role. Like even going back to a couple of games before Chelsea, when you took the lead in the title race and he gathered them round after the game on the pitch in a huddle.
Yeah,
and then he was playing Captain Marvel. And then he's going 100 miles an hour. He slips against Chelsea. I just felt like maybe those few games are quite symptomatic that he didn't quite have the control of a Scholes or a Xavi or an Iniesta. Yeah,
you're probably right. I think that game you mentioned where they got together in the huddle was the City game. So we'd been 2-0 up against City and dropped the 2-goal lead and then won 3-2. So that was, and as you're right, it's very like Roy the Rovers, come on, we can do this, let's go again sort of thing. But I think that was what he was always good at, was sort of grabbing momentum and going like, come on, let's get over the line. But
in my head right now is when Phil Brown got the whole players on for a half-time team talk.
Oh, yeah. But I think he was good at sort of harnessing momentum. But yeah, you're right. He'd never sort of led from the front. I mean, the European Cup he won, we were miles behind, and we weren't a good team. I think he was best at galvanising poor players to be better than they were. He was also, by the time this game happened, I'm not sure of the exact age, but he must have been 33, 4-ish. Not sure. He was definitely on the way in anyway.
Like I said, like obviously, I'm not. Everyone, any football fan in their right mind, I don't care who you are, even if you're a Man United or Everton fan, have to hold Gerrard highly. But I do think we've talked about Rodgers. I think the players have to take responsibility because, someone like Gerrard could have been, like you said, pulling them back, just holding in front of the back four, and just sort of seeing it over the line. I think, you can't just call Rodgers out. Senior players have to take responsibility for it as well. And the defenders.
We've vaguely mentioned Carragher before, haven't we? And he retired this season, or did he go on longer than that? I can't remember. Well, that's what I was going to say. I can't remember whether he was on the pitch now. But he was good at that at times, just going, no, let's all settle and stuff. And obviously in that game, it didn't happen. But I felt like from a fan, I wasn't at the Palace game. I don't go to an awful lot of away games. But my memory of it was we got 3-0 up and it looked like the players on the pitch were going, come on, we need to score 7 or something here, because just to sort of gnaw away at the goal difference, which was naive at best.
Yeah. I mean, you should come to Palace though, by the way, mate. It'd be nice for you to see a real football stadium. What was I going to say? Just on the subject, we finish off on Gerrard. In his book, he talked about playing Palace very, very early on in his career in the League Cup. And he talked about an incident with Clinton Morrison, where Clinton Morrison sort of dug Michael Owen out. Do you remember it?
I remember stuff about that. That was the 2000-2001 season, where we won all those trophies.
Good memory.
All the random ones. I remember at the time, Clinton Morrison had booked his hotel room for the final or something like that before, I think after the first leg, because you beat us in the first leg, didn't you?
We beat you only by like 1 goal. And then to be fair, he gave it big and about Michael Owen.
Yeah, he was saying how he was a better striker than Michael Owen and stuff like that. And Michael Owen won the Ballon d'Or that year when it was just European players, but still.
I mean, personally, I think if Clinton Morrison hadn't left us for Birmingham, he could have gone on to win the Ballon d'Or. But yeah,
carry on. But yeah, I mean, I did go to the return leg of that semi-final, and we walloped us about 5-0 or something. And I seem to remember Clinton Morrison missing an absolute sitter, like at the near post.
Right.
Might not, sitter might be a bit harsh. It wasn't an easy chance to take, but he was 2 yards.
Did he not even? Did he fall over in front of the cop or
something like that? And then the rest of the game, everyone was just singing Clinton, what's the score for the whole rest of the game. Like he pelted us, but
anyway, in his book after that game, Gerrard described us as poor little Palace. Do you think as he walked off, cradling Luis Suarez in his arms in tears, Gerrard finally knew who poor little Palace were?
Yeah, I mean, as you sort of alluded to before, I have actually read his book, but I can't recall individual bits like that. But as you alluded to before, football can come and bite you in the backside quite easily. And that's one of those occasions, in the same way where, you know, that the game he slipped, the little hood lead said, "This does not slip now." It's like poetic justice.
I mean, and to be fair, if he didn't know who little old Palace were after Crystanbul, he probably would have known who we are when we ruined his last game when we beat you there as well. So,
do you know what? That after this game, for a couple of seasons, Palace had some weird hold over us. Like,
yeah, I don't know.
You beat us when was it? Benteke scored and celebrated with Sakho, who was on loan from us, just in front of all the fans.
Spicy, wasn't it? Yeah.
That was the last time we've been beaten at Anfield for years. Like, we went on a run of about 3 years without getting beaten at Anfield, and that was it.
I mean, it might be that Crystanbul we sort of had that hold, but we are very good away. We were very good away from home. I'm wearing my Saha Never Dives t-shirt, but you know, when you have Saha and Yannick Bolasie on the break, we were just great on the counter. So, you know, like you said, beaten Man City at the Etihad recently, we've just kind of got that ability away from home against the bigger teams to do you on the counter. But anyway, I mean, I'm just having a bit of fun there with Gerrard. I mean, he could have a great career. But you mentioned Sakho. Now, he's obviously at Palace now. He's actually been in the news recently because he's been linked really highly with a move to Lyon. Now, Palace fans, we love Sakho, but the only two negatives are, one, he's got an error in him, and two, probably the biggest, is that he's injury prone to the point that a lot of Palace fans are saying they would take the money. What are your memories of Sakho? And do you think the rumours that he left was because of a rift with Klopp were true?
I don't even think that's a rumour now. It's basically, it's considered common knowledge anyway.
Really?
Yeah, absolutely. My memories of him now actually was that he was quite dependable, and he was just sort of coming into his own actually. He had a great season that year. We got to the Europa League final, but if you remember, he failed the drugs test for UEFA, but which eventually got like overturned. But he missed the Europa League final, and it was for taking like diet pills or something.
That went to court, and he got some sort of compensation for that.
Yeah, it definitely got overturned because what he'd taken, he was allowed to take, but I don't know the ins and outs of it. But on the pitch, I thought he was actually more dependable than he sort of looked. If you know what I mean, you'll know from watching him now, he sort of looks awkward, doesn't he?
Yeah.
Sort of looks like his legs are on back to front. So when he does pass a ball, it looks awkward, but he doesn't actually lose the ball that often. I seem to remember him being more dependable than you would think. Like,
I mean, the crux of it for Palace fans is, so the Palace fans who argue you should stay, and they say to the fans who say, I don't care because he makes the one mistake, is we're never going to move on as a team. We'll just constantly have stoppers like Damien Delaney. You've got to take the odd mistake, but actually his passing is probably, as a defender, one of the best in the league. But he does look awkward the way he runs, like you said. So it just makes you quite scared as a fan. But yeah,
at that time as well,
there was definitely some
stuff there in front of us
when we went back to Anfield, and he celebrated on the side.
Yeah, and he was on loan then. It was a bit naughty, that, really.
Yeah. So when he comes back, he's not a popular figure when he comes back to Anfield.
Probably not so much now, but obviously Klopp sort of walks on water at the moment with Liverpool fans. So the fact he fell out with Klopp just doesn't.
I'll put it to you like this: if Clinton Morrison and Sakho were hanging off a cliff, which one would you save?
Sakho probably, but I don't mind Clinton Morrison. I think he's all right when he's on Sky Sports and stuff. No, I think he's okay.
Let's just sum it up. So I just want to know what your final thoughts are. I mean, the image that is now sort of iconic, and it was amazing to watch, was Luis Suarez on the ground in tears, Gerrard like pushing the Sky camera. It was I stood seeing it there with my own eyes. It was like watching football history unfurl in front of my eyes. I mean, I hadn't seen that level of emotion that I saw from Suarez and Gerrard since the 90s, when Take That split and there were teenage girls screaming out in London outside the press conference. What were your thoughts at the end of the game? Did you have a box of Kleenex next to you? Were you drying your eyes?
I find it difficult to remember exactly, possibly because I've sort of watched it from my memory a little bit. But I remember sort of thinking a similar feeling we'd had in a few games that season where, they've thrown it away, terrible defence, stuff like that. I sort of remember seeing Suarez go and crying like that and thinking, what are you doing, mate? Like it wasn't in our hands anyway at that point. Do you know what I mean? So we went into the game and it wasn't really in our hands, and we left the game and it still wasn't in our hands. But we actually still went into the last game of the season with a chance to win the league, which we hadn't done at all since 1990. That was the first time we went into the last game with a chance to win. So in my mind, I was looking at Suarez and going, come on, mate, like, pull yourself together a little bit. But I suppose knowing what Suarez was like as a character, he probably thought, we can bang another 3 or 4 goals in here and then we'll beat Newcastle 7-0 and then that'll be enough. Which I was actually putting together before. We went into this game with City 9 goals ahead of us. We finished the season with City 14 goals ahead of us. So I actually was thinking, if we'd have gone on to win this game, say 3-0 or 4-0 or 3-1 even, we still would have finished miles behind City on goal difference. Yeah. That's why I think in my mind it's never been, that's the game we lost on, you know.
You didn't at least put it to the test, because I think if you were 3 points ahead, then there's more pressure, and then that sort of gives the opposition, the Aston Villa and West Ham, who were still to play Man City, it gives them like more reason. They know everyone's watching to be up for the game. Do you know what I mean? I think when Kenny Dalglish won the league with Blackburn, and Man United could have won it if they'd beaten West Ham, and the West Ham goalie had, this was back in the 90s, the West Ham goalie had an absolute blinder. I think it's a shame that we'll never know what would have happened if you'd applied the pressure. And just thinking back that Delaney's goal was on the 79th minute, it's ridiculous that we never found out. But obviously, I enjoyed it. But I do think that Liverpool team go down as an iconic team, just that they were brilliant to watch, like the Kevin Keegan Newcastle. So, I mean, just to sum it up, we've had a bit of banter at times, Danny, but I think that was a really brilliant team. Gerrard and Suarez in particular were fantastic together. And are you looking forward to putting that in the past and finally winning the league in the next few weeks, hopefully?
Yeah, it looks, now that they've arranged games to be played, it looks pretty much on the cards, doesn't it? It's just a shame not to be able to be there.
Yeah, sad.
Actually celebrate it properly. But in a funny way, I think that might drive us on a bit more next season to try and do it properly.
Well, listen, I hope that the people of Liverpool find a safe way to celebrate you winning the league. You definitely deserve it this season. Thanks for being a good sport, because it's not probably your ideal game to discuss. I'll have you back on once you've won the league if you want.
Is right.
Yeah. Nice. Okay. Thank you everybody for watching. If you like this video, please subscribe and look at other content, including Wilfred Zaha and Man United flop exposing the myth. We've had some interesting feedback on that one. I will see you soon.